What's going on, college football fans? Welcome back to the First and Long College Football Show. I'm your co-host Marcus, joined as always by my co-host Mason. We have got our overreaction show for you this evening. We're going to be talking about what we just witnessed in the very first, very historic first round of the college football playoff. We had some real nail biters, Mason. We just had me on the edge of my seat for
Yeah.
about 5 minutes apiece there, and then it was pretty much over before it got started. So we're going to talk about all of it, what it means for each team. We'll kind of lightly dip our toe into the quarterfinals of the college football playoff, and kind of just talk about those matchups just at a glance, and take any questions that you guys got in the comment section. So please feel free to put them there. Let's get going. If you are new to the First and Long College Football Show, welcome. We hope that you'll consider hitting the subscribe button. Please hit the like button if you're one of our normal folks that comes and hangs out in the comment section. Thank you so much for tuning in once again, if that's you. And we invite you to come join us throughout the season, the off season, all year long. We've got content popping up, college football style, Power Four coverage. We cover all the big conferences in and then some. We've got some great stuff going on here on the channel, so I hope that you'll come and hang out with us, especially as these college football playoffs continue to heat up. Mason, we got some stinkers on the first round, brother. Uh, where to begin? How you doing?
Doing good. I guess we can start with how am I doing? I'm well rested, Mark. After the games last night, we just had so many snoozers. I got about 3 naps in yesterday throughout those games because man, they were hard to watch. I'll be honest with you. It was the first time this weekend that or this year, this season that doing this channel and doing this show. I felt like I was working watching these games. I felt like I had to watch them because otherwise I did not want to watch it. We knew how it was going to end, and so it felt like to me, and I guess I'll just start with kind of the overarching general consensus of college football fans right now, and maybe I'm off base. Y'all tell me in the comment section how you feel about the first round of the 12-team playoff and how you think this new playoff system is going. But I feel like college football is having a hard time getting out of their own way right now, right? We, as college football fans, who at least those of us who are college football fans first, which I consider myself college football fan over any other sport, right? Over the NFL, let's say, for example, since those are the same sport. Um, when I'm trying to tell someone who watches almost strictly NFL football that college football is a better product than the NFL, and that's the playoff we get in the first round. What are they going to think?
Yeah.
It's terrible. It is absolutely terrible, and I don't know what the solution is necessarily. I know that the conference champions getting a bye in the first round that needs to go away. Top four teams should get a bye if we're going to keep 12 teams in. Top four teams, regardless of whether or not they won their conference, those teams should get a bye, and allow for some of the teams at the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, of the top 12 to play amongst themselves. Let's see some competitive football games in the first round, and then allow the competition to get better as time goes on. Secondly, if you're looking at the committee and you say, well, I think they got the top 12 right, the games just weren't right. Let's say that was all fixed. You would still have some matchups. If you look at the top 12 teams in college football, you would still have some matchups that would lead to blowouts, right? That's really nothing new to college football. The playoffs, even in the 14 playoff, we had, I want to say it was 12 out of 20 games in the 14 playoffs in the first round were won by 14 or more points. So this isn't exactly new. We just thought with 4 games being played within 2 days, one of those games would be really, really good, right? And they weren't. And I think that that's kind of the biggest issue. Typically, even if there are a couple of blowouts in a season, it's backed by some really good bowl games. So there's other content to watch. And right now, we've put so much emphasis on the college football playoff. I completely forgot that Florida and Tulane were playing. That was a game I wanted to watch, but I was so enamored by the playoffs that I didn't even turn the channel to that. So, um, point is, I want to know what you guys think in the comment section. How do you feel about the college football playoffs? Because in this first round, it seems like the committee, the college football playoff as an organization, just completely missed this one. And it's, to me, I think it's just kind of a downer for college football as a whole. Because now we're going into round two, and it's looking like if things play out like this one did, we're going to have another two games that are going to be blowouts. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on it, Mark? And again, in the comment section, let us know what you think about the first round so far.
Well, obviously the games were duds, and I don't think anybody's going to be able to come on any show and tell you any differently. I mean, those were certainly all snoozers. They're all double-digit victories. Every single home team covered the spread in these games, and we kind of talked about it before the show started today, before we got on air. Vegas knew what was about to happen, I'm pretty sure, because now looking back at it, and hindsight's always 2020, right? Call me Captain Hindsight here, but all those 7.5 point, 11-point spreads in those football games, whenever Vegas thinks that teams are really close, they typically give you a 2 or 3 point spread on those games, right? And we were getting 7, 8, 9, 11 point spreads, and we should have known something was up whenever we did that. Not to mention, you just talked about the history of the first round, whether it was 4-team, whether it was, now 12-team, obviously. There's been a bunch of blowouts. I mean, that is just the nature of the beast. And, every single time just about every single time you look at those situations, you see a team that was subject of criticism for the fact that they were even in the college football playoff. But that wasn't really the case with Tennessee. So maybe let's start with that game, and then we'll kind of work our way through. But Tennessee wasn't one of those teams that were necessarily on the bubble. Nobody was talking about Alabama needed to be in over Tennessee, and I get the head-to-head. Maybe that was a bad example, but nobody was lobbying for Tennessee to not make the college football playoff. And they absolutely went out there and just laid an egg. I mean, they never got off the bus. So, and like I said, let's talk about that one first, and we'll kind of work our way through these games. Ohio State 42, Tennessee 17. As I said, Tennessee never really got off the bus. We talked about something interesting as well before we started airing, and we were just kind of spitballing some ideas at each other and just some of our thoughts. And, Tennessee's offense couldn't get much going, first of all. We'll just start with the offense and just kind of throw that out there. I mean, they just couldn't get much going. And I didn't realize, maybe you knew or said something and I didn't hear you or whatever. I didn't know that Samson wasn't playing. I didn't know that was a thing. Like he played like one snap or whatever, or like a couple plays. Like that is your best player on offense. If you don't have him, that's what the offense has ran through all year. And it's not like a next man up mentality for Tennessee. There is no next man in that backfield. It's Samson, and that's it. So should have known, first of all, that was going to be the case. Tennessee is a run-first football team. There is no wide receiver on this team that's a first or second round draft pick. There's none of that threat on this team as far as the wide receiver core goes. So needed that run game to be able to be successful, and that Ohio State defense just was not allowing it. But Tennessee defensively, I thought the game plan was all out of whack, Mason. Tennessee started off this game daring Ohio State to throw the ball. And what did Ohio State do? Got behind them, and they threw the ball to Jeremiah Smith. If you're going to dare somebody to throw the ball, you can't allow them to get over the top of you. And I know that that's easier said than done when you're talking about, a guy who's probably the next Marvin Harrison Jr. type, player at Ohio State. I mean, he's absolutely a star, no doubt. But every time I saw Jeremiah Smith make a catch, it was one-on-one. He was on an island against one of these corners. And where's the safety help? I kept saying it during the game. Where's the safety help? Tennessee was so sold out on stopping the run and daring Ohio State to throw it, Ohio State just proved that they could do that. And I felt like the approach was backwards. I felt like Tennessee should have had more of an approach to try to stop. You know what you've got in that defensive line for Tennessee. You don't need a bunch of extra guys there. Those guys are stout. Let them do their thing. Spread everybody out. Ohio State was killing Tennessee's defense off the edges running the football. They didn't run up the middle because they knew they didn't have an advantage there. They were running off the edges, and they were hitting them on the pop plays. And this Tennessee secondary is just not built to be able to withstand that. And Ohio State saw that on film, and Tennessee allowed Ohio State to play the exact football game that they wanted to play in this one. It was a really bad showing by Tennessee. I went and watched a couple of guys last night after this game was over. They're Tennessee fans, and they've got a pretty semi-famous podcast, and I was interested to see their reactions. They're both Tennessee fans, and both of them seem to be pretty upset with Josh Heupel on this one. And the reason is one of them was upset with Josh Heupel, or both of them were upset with Heupel. One of them was upset with Tim Banks, which we'll talk about both of those here for just a second. Josh Heupel's offenses have not been that great the last couple of years, Mason.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 2 years in a row now. Now, I get you lose some talented guys and you have a kind of a down year, and then you would hopefully bounce back the next year. That hasn't been the case. Okay, Tennessee has been as bad or worse offensively than they were last year. The defense is what got them to where they've been. That defensive line specifically. There's something missing here, and I think this offense for Tennessee, what is required for it to pop: NFL quarterback, one NFL wide receiver, and one NFL running back. I think that's like mandatory for this Josh Heupel offense, Mason, because both of the last 3 years they've been missing at least one or if not two of those three pieces over the last couple of years. And right now I think his quarterback is the biggest thing holding you back, but I don't think there's an awesome wide receiver on this roster either. I think they're all decent. I think there's some decent ones, but I don't think there's that game wrecker, Evan Stewart type or Jeremiah Smith type, to throw it up to and hope he catches a 50-50 ball. So I hope some of that made sense. But Tennessee was in an unfamiliar situation there. This is as far as Tennessee's made it in the college football world in a long time now, right? So this should be a good moment for the Tennessee fans. It was overshadowed by an absolute ass whooping. Congratulations to Ohio State and the Buckeyes. I thought they played their very best game of the year. They showed me things on offense for Ohio State that I haven't seen. I haven't seen them do all year. And partly I think it was due to the fact that Tennessee was daring them to do some of that stuff. Ohio State passed the test. They can do it, and they can win multiple different ways on offense. Watch out. Ohio State, if they're playing up to their potential like they did this weekend, they're going to be very hard to beat.
Yeah, I think that Chip Kelly had Tim Banks' number in this. He absolutely just figured out what Tim Banks was going to do. And
can I address that Tim Banks thing real quick? And I'll just set that up, and you finish it up here. One of the guys on that podcast wanted Tim Banks fired. Guys, that's absolutely insane. That is absolutely insane. He's one of the 3 coaches in line to receive the Broyles Award.
Yeah,
you can't fire him. Who are you hiring? This is the best defense Tennessee's had in years. I just had to throw that out there so that I could disagree with it, because I think that is absolutely ridiculous. Was it a bad game plan? Yes. Did the offense set the defense up for success? Hell no, they didn't. This was a team loss. This wasn't a defensive loss or an offensive loss. This was a team loss here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that the defense, and we were talking about this earlier, but off air, but why did the defense not say, okay, obviously Ohio State's throwing the football. Let's drop back into coverage, have a light box, see what we can stop in the run game with a light box, and stop Jeremiah Smith. Maybe we bracket that guy because they're obviously targeting him. He's obviously a big component in the game plan, more than he's been in any other game this year. It seemed, at least. I'm no Ohio State insider, but it seemed like Jeremiah Smith was getting a lot more looks than he has for most of the year.
Well,
And
and
the
whenever
stats kind of prove
Tennessee,
that.
they did adapt, because I saw them in the second half of that game, Mason. They started rushing 3, and they were kind of almost like spying with the linebacker, kind of. But, dude, so I'm glad you said this, because we really needed to bring it up. Tennessee's linebacker play was horrid.
Yeah,
I'm talking about
they've been bad since they lost Peely. We thought that they had the answer. It's not really there,
dude. It was when they rushed 3, they were in position at the end of that game to stop some of this that was going on. Couldn't make the tackle.
Yep. Yeah, it was absolutely terrible. And, really, we had seen the secondary for Tennessee get tested in recent weeks against lesser wide receiving groups. And once they went up against one of the best, if not the best, receiving core in the country, they just absolutely flailed. I mean, it was terrible watching them up against these receivers. And I think we've kind of railed on Tennessee enough. I do want to say that I thought that the game plan for Ohio State was clearly better. I think that was that stadium had the most juice out of all the stadiums that we saw, right? It gave their team the home field advantage, regardless of whether or not there were 30,000 Tennessee fans there. It didn't seem to matter. You could tell that Tennessee was clearly rattled in that game. And you could tell that that Ohio State just prepared better. They knew exactly what Tennessee was going to do defensively, and they went after it. Will Howard looked very commanding in the offense. He didn't seem as flustered with anything that the defense was doing, and he executed. He absolutely executed. He hit some balls. He hit some throws. There was one to Egbuka that I saw at one point where I was like, "There's no way he caught that," and sure enough, his receiver did. I wish Georgia receivers would do that every once in a while, but I digress. I mean, the offense for Ohio State, like you said, showed us something that we haven't seen all season from them. They legitimately went out and said, "We're going to pass to win this game." The defense, we know what they're going to do. They're going to load the box and expect us to run the football. They still had success in the run game, but they passed to set up the run, and that's different than they've done all year. And it was the exact game plan that they needed going into this to get Tennessee on their heels, for Tennessee to kind of be reactionary, thinking that Ohio State was going to run the football first and then pass whenever they needed to. Just wasn't what was going on there. And it's just a really good, well-played execution from Ohio State. This game could have easily been 60-10 if they wanted it to. They definitely took their foot off the brakes here. But this is what a $20 million roster is supposed to look like. Ohio State hasn't executed to this level all season long, but they have the horses. This is clearly one of, if not the best roster in college football. And not only does the payroll say that, but what they just put out on the field yesterday and last night, that kind of proves that as well. I will pump the brakes a little bit in saying this game against Tennessee, although we thought it would be much more competitive than this, doesn't necessarily mean that Ohio State's going to beat Oregon, right? And we'll go through and figure out what the matchups are, how Ohio State wins that game, how Oregon wins that game. All that'll be put out for you this coming Tuesday, and then we'll do a second preview on Sunday. But what I saw from Tennessee was what we've been seeing from them all season long. They don't play well on the road. They just don't. They haven't all season long. Both of their losses came on the road against Arkansas.
It's been a couple years now, too. You remember last year when Tennessee went on the road to Florida? You remember that? And Florida was awful. That's what this game reminded me of. Tennessee this past weekend reminded me of that weekend when they went on the road to Florida and just got absolutely pummeled by a 5-win Florida team. Absolutely pummeled. I think Florida ran for 300 yards on them or something like that. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was a different style of ass whooping, but an ass whooping all the same. That's what this Tennessee team looked like. It's been going on a couple years now, Mason, and playing on the road is a huge problem for this team.
Well, and I would say if you were to power rank the SEC, where would Tennessee fall in your power ranking, Mark? Because I don't think they're the third best team in the SEC. I think they're more like sixth. Like I would have them behind Alabama, maybe Alabama. I don't know. I would definitely have them behind South Carolina and Ole Miss, obviously Georgia and Texas, but I would say fifth at best, right? So don't if you're Ohio State, you can't sit here and say, well, we just clobbered the third best team in the SEC. I don't necessarily think that, and I think that if you're playing a Texas and potentially a Georgia, I'm still kind of I want to see what Georgia has with Gunnar Stockton before I'm going to say that Georgia's even, the second best team in the SEC or anything like that. We'll see. I don't know that Georgia necessarily has a chance to win the national championship. But we'll get into that game here in a minute. But my point is, this Tennessee brand, especially without Dylan Sampson, is not exactly what you would say the cream of the crop of the SEC, even though they're one of only 3 teams to get in this year.
Yeah, absolutely. We got some other games to talk about here, so let's keep it moving. You guys that are hanging out with us live, I appreciate it. Comment in the comment section. I always appreciate you guys coming and hanging out with us and keeping us company. That's awesome stuff. Y'all like the video if you haven't done it yet for us real quick, and let's keep going. We got some other ones to talk about here, and we're on a time frame tonight, so we're going to react to this stuff. Mason kind of alluded to it just a second ago. We're overreacting tonight. We're going to be back on Tuesday night, and we're going to give these full breakdowns on these games. We'll kind of give our thoughts on them just a little bit as we go here, but join us Tuesday evening for all of our breakdowns on these games, our early previews, if you will. Let's talk about. We'll just go in the rest of them in chronological order. Indiana, Notre Dame. This one came on Friday. Notre Dame takes care of business 27-17. That game was not nearly as close as what it appeared. Notre Dame did exactly what they wanted to do in this football game. And Mason, we just absolutely nailed this one last week. This game came down to the line of scrimmage. And it came down to the fact that Indiana cannot compete with the big boys right this second on the line of scrimmage. Look, if Curt Cignetti could just come in, wave a magic wand, and go win a playoff game with Indiana, I mean, that would be pretty much like some GOAT shit, right? Like, I mean, that's to sit here and think that he's going to wave this transfer portal magic wand and you're just going to block an awesome defensive line in a college football playoff game. That's fairy tale shit, man. And Indiana did the very best with what they had this season. This was a great season for Indiana, something to literally hang your hat on. But Notre Dame has got NFL players sprinkled throughout their roster. And they're just bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, just like Curt Cignetti said in the post-game conference after this one. He said, we fought, we did some things good. They just had guys bigger, faster, stronger than us at multiple positions. And that's what it looked like in this game. Now, Notre Dame did their thing running the football, and that identity is not going to change for Notre Dame. But Notre Dame is about to step up in class here. They're going to be playing at 8:45 p.m., and that'll be on New Year's Day, y'all. So that's going to be on not this coming Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, right, on January 1st, 8:45 p.m. be a late game. Notre Dame's going to have their work cut out for them because they're not going to have an advantage on the line of scrimmage anymore whenever they line up. So I'm interested to see what Notre Dame looks like going forward I thought it was a little interesting that Notre Dame wasn't able to keep their foot on the gas at the end of that game. I thought it was something that kind of concerned Marcus Freeman as well. I could kind of tell that he tensed up a pretty good bit. Like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we making this, even a thought right here at the end of the game? Um, I'm proud of what I saw from Notre Dame, defensively, offensively. They did exactly what they've done all year, pretty much. Indiana continues to just have their issues, and honestly, Mason, they met all the prerequisites to get into the college football playoff, um, but they were a beneficiary of a very easy schedule this year, man. And I've tried to really just hold back, and I don't want to rain on anybody's parade or whatever, but Indiana just isn't a very good football team. Um,
Yeah.
they're a top 30 football team in the country as far as lining up and beating teams head to head. They took care of their schedule like they were supposed to, all that good stuff. But man, it was just too much brought to the table by Notre Dame, and Indiana is just not battle tested like that. Mason, I thought special teams for both of these teams in this game were pretty suspect too. Something that I noticed while watching it. Notre Dame's going to have to tighten that up. I saw several of these first round playoff games, teams trying to go for fourth downs and things like that rather than flip field position. Didn't understand that a lot whenever I saw it this past weekend. Notre Dame and Indiana were both guilty of that. Got to flip the field when you get an opportunity to do it, especially a defensive led football team like Notre Dame. You're going to want to flip the field any chance that you get, and don't give your opponents any kind of cheap points. But we could get down that rabbit hole with just about any of these teams, I guess. But Notre Dame looked fine. I didn't walk away from that game thinking anything more about Notre Dame than what I'd already thought. I already thought highly of them. But it was a ho-hum victory, I guess you'll say.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking about the kind of fourth quarter comeback by Indiana, if you want to call it that, Indiana's been doing that all year long. I had several bets hit on Indiana in the fourth quarter throughout the season, to win in the fourth quarter, and they did that 14-7 in this one. But I will say it looked like there were a lot of second stringers in there for Notre Dame, and that had a lot to do, obviously, with Indiana having some success there in the fourth quarter. I don't
Yeah, for
think
sure.
I don't think much of it for Notre Dame. Um, I mean, the takeaway here, I guess, if you're not going to go with Indiana should have never been in, right? And we could argue that. I don't know if you're in a 12 team playoff and you play in the Big Ten and you're 11-1, I feel like you would think you should get in. But when you go back and look at their schedule, you notice that they didn't have any top 25 wins.
Yeah.
That should be like a criteria moving forward to get into the college football playoff. Either that or win a conference championship, and they didn't do either of those. SMU
Well,
didn't do either of those, right?
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
It just the college football playoff parameters were set up for failure to begin with. So, should Notre Dame have been in, or excuse me, should Indiana have been in? Technically, yes, but we all saw what happened. I guess is my point, right? And I think that's the overlying point that you're trying to make as well, Mason. Like,
yeah.
they deserve to be in based upon protocols and what was set up ahead of time. But
But
gosh,
if
man,
if Indiana
we want
didn't
better
play in the
games
Big
than this. We
Ten,
all wanted good games, and we did not get it with this matchup.
no. But if Indiana was 11-1 and played for an FCS school, right? They're not getting in. They don't have an Ashton Genty. They didn't win their conference. Like, let's not pretend that just because you're in a certain conference means that if you don't have three or more losses, you should get in automatically. I think the issue with the committee was that they ranked Indiana too high too soon, to where they lose the Ohio State game. They can't drop them back too far because it's Ohio State. Like, a lot of teams get beat by Ohio State. And then they win the rest of their games. So you couldn't move them out of the top 12 at that point. It wouldn't make sense. They should have done it. They should have kept them lower, even though they were 7-0, 8-0, whatever it was. if they would have been held back lower, then they could have not been in. But it was a great story for Indiana. I thought it was a great season. Also, I want to talk about Curt Cignetti a little bit because I lost some respect for him throughout this football game. Yeah, you probably saw where Shane Gillis said something on College Game Day about Curt Cignetti, how he came out just to grab some screen time, left his team in the locker room before the game started, and I thought that was kind of funny. It was a joke. He's kind of ribbing him, but it definitely did happen, and that was a thing. And then in the middle of the game, I think it was right after the first quarter, one of the sideline reporters is going to interview Curt Cignetti, and things are clearly not going great for Indiana. And before they actually go live, he's sitting there smiling and cutting up with her. And then he realizes they're live and gets serious real quick and then talks about the game a little bit. And I'll go back even further than that. In the Ohio State game, in the post-game interview, he sits down and the first thing he says is something, and I forget exactly what he said, but something to the effect of the Cinderella story had to end at some point, right? And this was just with one loss against Ohio State, and you're talking about how the other shoe was going to drop eventually. It felt like, despite what he was saying, and despite the fact that he was saying we're not just happy to be here, we want to win more, it really felt to me like they were really happy to just be there, right? He was really happy to get the team to a certain point to the college football playoffs, and that be it. He mission accomplished. He set himself up for future for future success with Indiana or wherever he may choose to go down the road. As good as a job that he did, I really started to see kind of through the facade in a sense, and I'm starting to wonder if he kind of got a little bit too big-headed going into this football game, because it didn't look like this was the prepared Indiana team that we've seen all season long. That team, if it were to show up, I think that they are a little bit more competitive than they were in this one.
They were telling a story whenever they were doing kind of his like breakdown or his kind of like monologue intro. Not a monologue, that's not the right word, but anyway, you know how they do. They kind of do like a deep dive and tell you about his background and stuff. And one of the commentators was telling the story about how in the offseason, he, I guess, got offered the Indiana job, or there was some smoke about the Indiana job, and him and his wife were sitting at home, and they pulled up the schedule. And his wife told him, said, "Look at the schedule. I think there's 10 wins on here." And it was almost like a slip up. Whenever they said that, I was like, oh, shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have liked somebody, I wouldn't have told anybody that story. First of all, if I was Curt Cignetti, I don't think I'm saying, well, I saw 10 wins and I'm here, baby. So Curt Cignetti's kind of wearing on some people the wrong way, buddy. They're giving, he's giving some people the red ass, and at a place like Indiana, in a conference like the Big Ten, boy, there's going to be a target on their back next year, buddy. I mean, they're going to get everybody's best game next year. Everybody's going to look
and
forward to.
They're losing a ton. They're about to lose all these 26-year-olds they got on their roster.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no shit. They got guys my age out there for real, and it really just don't even help. Notre Dame 27, Indiana 17. Notre Dame comes out on top. Congratulations to the Fighting Irish. I thought you played a solid game. Thought you played your brand of football. And that's the number one thing I hate to see in these college football playoff games is whenever these teams get in here and they don't stick to their identity. They try to do things that they can't do, and sometimes it leads to some blowouts and things like that. And I thought Notre Dame really just kind of played their brand of football this weekend, and that's exactly what they needed to do against Indiana and those weak lines of scrimmage. Congratulations again, as I said, to the Notre Dame fans. Can't wait to break down that game against Georgia. Notre Dame's going to have to find a passing game pretty quickly. Not going to be able to run like that on Georgia, but that was exactly what the doctor ordered against Indiana, certainly. All right, let's jump through these last couple, Mason, because I got to get on the road and I got to go do some work tonight. SMU at Penn State, absolute blowout here, Mason. Look, this seemed similar to me. The Notre Dame and Indiana game, SMU, Penn State, they seemed very similar. Penn State scored more points. The defense scored 2 touchdowns in this one, so that certainly helped. Look, I thought SMU's defense actually played decent, and that's weird to say whenever Penn State hung 38. But like I said, 2 of those touchdowns were, returned interceptions, right? But scored by Penn State's defense. So I thought SMU's defense played decent enough, right, to be in this football game. Offensively, didn't stand a chance. This Penn State defense absolutely pinned their ears back and made life a living hell for Kevin Jennings in that offense. It was never meant to be, Mason. This offensive line, again, I feel like I'm a broken record here. Same deal with Indiana. This mosh podge of offensive linemen that SMU's got going on is not that of a caliber that's going to be able to match up with a Penn State or a Notre Dame. Penn State is just too solid of a football team to be duped out with by an offensive line that really just it ain't big enough, it ain't fast enough, it ain't strong enough, it ain't good enough, and that's really just the fact of the matter for SMU. Again, we've got another one of these teams that snuck in here this year by not playing anyone, and they joined the ACC, and the ACC had every chance to lay the hammer down on them with the schedule, and they didn't do it for whatever reason. So I don't know what that was about, how it worked out that way. We saw SMU play one hard game this year. They lost to BYU, who ended up really not being that great of a team in their own right. So it's just SMU was a team that probably didn't belong in this situation necessarily, Mason. But yet again, they played in the ACC championship game. Came back in that fourth quarter. That fourth quarter of the ACC championship was the whole reason they were in the college football playoff, but it was all for naught, man. Penn State is starting to show me something, as far as a team. They've got a will to win like I haven't really seen from a Penn State team over the last few years. This team seems to have some confidence. The jury's still out offensively, I think, for Drew Aller and this Penn State offense. I think there's still a little bit that they leave to be desired as far as in the passing game and things like that.
First quarter or first half, it looked pretty bad.
Yeah. So I think the offense is still it's a question mark for Penn State as far as winning the big one. Okay. Penn State is certainly one of the 12 best teams in the country. I don't think I have any qualms about that at this point. How they're going to go as far as the offense will take them. The defense is going to be somewhat steady. I think they're going to give up some yards. They'll give up some points, but they're going to keep you in these ball games and possibly win you a ball game. If you put the ball in their hands, or put the game in their hands rather. So what did you think about this one? I thought Penn State was, again, pretty impressive, but impressive in a different way than what I saw against Oregon. So I'm starting to see the best teams in the country, the teams that caught my eye this weekend are the ones that won in multiple ways. They figured out the style that fit that game and were able to execute. And I thought Penn State, they were able to win a different way this weekend, and they get a college football playoff win. It's a big deal. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Penn State won this game in the first half defensively, and they really rattled Kevin Jennings early in this football game. Caused 4 turnovers in the first half. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. 2 pick sixes in the first half, and that was kind of the ball game. And two, let me add, because we were watching this game and I was saying, hey, really SMU's still in it. We just saw this against Clemson just a couple weeks ago. Now, granted, Penn State's not Clemson. Penn State gets better as the game goes on, not worse. Clemson gets worse as the game goes on. Typically, they didn't this week, but what was really important for Penn State was to capitalize on the interceptions, capitalize on the turnovers. They did that. They scored defensively on 2 of them. And then the offense, I think on one of them they didn't score, and then on another one they did. And then at the end of the half, they went down and scored as well. And then it was kind of iced at that point. I felt like the Penn State defense was up so much that there was no way that SMU was going to come back. I thought Kevin Jennings and the SMU team in general looked really cold in this environment. We were wondering what these teams would do in the Big Ten in these outside stadiums, and I thought that SMU kind of looked like they were cold and caught off guard. I think that that did play a factor in this game. But ultimately, Kevin Jennings, it was a great story all season long. He wasn't supposed to be the starting quarterback. We forget he came into the season as a backup, and in the biggest moment, he kind of played like an inexperienced quarterback. And really that's kind of what cost SMU the game here. I thought their defense kept them in this football game, in particular in the first half. The SMU defense was playing good football. Their defensive line was playing with Penn State's offensive line really well, but I thought that SMU's offensive line lost the battle as well against the defensive line for Penn State. I mean, the, look, these guys just did what they want. Abdul Carter, Danny Dennis Sutton, they were both just doing whatever they wanted, pushing around the offensive line for SMU. That to me was a huge difference in this football game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's keep it going here. Clemson at Texas. I saw some fight, at least in this football game. Saw a little bit of fight. I was pretty impressed with the way that Clemson was able to pretty much one-dimensionally move up and down the field. I'm pretty impressed with that, to be honest with you. I think Clemson has got something with Cade Klubnik that's in the works right now. Like I think he's going to take another step forward next year. I think there's a lot to look forward to for Clemson. I think Clemson needs to fire their defensive coordinator. I think Wes Goodwin? He's got to go. He has not done near enough with the talent that he's got on this defense, I don't think. But that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day. And I know there's a whole section of the Clemson fan base that feels that way as well. But let's talk about Texas. This was the best I've seen the Texas offense look, I think, all year. And it was aided by the run game. Obviously, your offense is going to look good when you run for almost 300 yards. Couldn't really figure that one out, Mason. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't really figure out how Texas can only run for 40 yards when they play Georgia and 300 yards when they play Clemson. Now, I mean, obviously, Georgia's not Clemson and Clemson's not Georgia, and I get that. That's the obvious answer to that. But I know this defensive front for Clemson is better than that. And this is not a world-beating club, the Texas Longhorns, as far as running the football. So it was a bit of a surprise. I was not expecting Texas to run the ball that well. Congratulations to the Texas Longhorns. College football playoff victory at home. That's huge. I thought Quinn Ewers played a really good game. I thought they did a much better job protecting him in this game. He was able to make some pretty impressive throws. We saw the tight end get involved, Gunnar Helm. That was something that was missing both times Texas played Georgia. Gunnar Helm didn't do a whole heck of a lot. And so getting him involved and getting him in the end zone, I think, was a really, really big deal as far as getting him lathered up for the college football playoff. We saw Texas block consistently on the offensive line. I'm talking. They blocked consistently without having a tight end or two on the inside of the line. And so that's a step in the right direction, I think, for Texas, who we've seen at times this year, the offensive line just hadn't looked that good, especially whenever they played a good team like Georgia. Texas 38, Clemson 24. I thought it was a really good showing, as I said, by the offense. And if this is as bad of a performance as it gets for the Texas defense, then, which it might be, this is one of their worst performances of the year as far as, giving up points and things like that. So, right whenever Texas needed the offense to step up, they stepped up. I think Texas is still a defensive-led football team, and that's what they're going to rest their laurels on. They're going to face off with Arizona State in about 10 days from now. What did you think about this one, man? The story of this one certainly is the run game and how successful that was. If Texas can replicate that and be multi-dimensional, then they're going to be much harder to stop on offense and much harder to predict what's coming next. That hasn't been the case all year.
Right. And so For me, I think the Clemson side, you absolutely nailed it. The takeaway is 2025 should be pretty good for this offense. I think Cade Klubnik took a step in the right direction all season long. Looked almost his best, I would say, in this game. Played in a lot of close games that I think if three or four plays go your way, you can swing 14 points in 3 or 4
Well,
plays.
and
So
let me add this: the whole reason I think that the reason I'm saying this, guys, I mean, they didn't score 1,000,000 points or he didn't have 500 yards passing. They had no run game.
nothing.
They
Who
had
was the
no
run
run game. So that's my point in bringing this up. Cade Klubnik was doing all this without any support in the backfield.
Yeah,
I just
Phil
wanted
Moffitt's
to make sure we
clearly
threw that in
still
there. I don't
hurt.
know if I rounded that point off or not.
Yeah, no, and I mean, Phil Moffitt's clearly still hurt. He had two
Yeah.
carries in this game. Um, that they really needed him to get going because if Texas was going to be exploited in any way in this game, it was going to be through the run game. And we did see some success early from Clemson in the run game with Klubnik taking off. I think it was Adam Randall had a couple of good runs there, but it was not sustainable. Without Phil Maffa, without a real bruiser, and then two, Clemson has struggled on the offensive line for years now. They just don't recruit that position very well. This was probably the best offensive line we've seen from Clemson in a few years, but going up against an SEC defensive line, which is just bigger than, I mean, physically they're just bigger than they are in the ACC. This offensive line wasn't able to get it done. Going to Texas, you're right. The run game was much more effective, and you saw, if you saw the half game little interview there from the sideline reporter when they asked Sarkisian kind of why is the run game getting so good? Why is it having so much success in this football game? He said we're just being we're just going after the run a little bit more. We're committing to the run game more than we have all year. He said a lot of that's on me for not committing to the run game. But we made a point to really lean on our running backs in this football game, and it showed. I mean, 48 attempts, like that's a lot of rushing attempts there. They end up with almost 300 yards. The passing game was not sloppy. It complemented the run game very well. I thought that Quinn Ewers played a really good game. There weren't too many mistakes that were made. He does still seem a little bit off in some cases. He doesn't seem to have as much zip on the ball as we saw last season. I think he is still having issues with that plant foot and that ankle, and then maybe still a rib issue as well. Maybe a combination of the two. But I thought he was extremely effective in this game. It was for it being the most competitive game of the weekend. It definitely felt like it was put away in the first half, and it was one of those you kind of just, if you had something else to do, it's probably a good time to go do it. It's to me, I can't take much away from this game. I think that Texas going up against Arizona State is a totally different game than it was going up against Clemson. I think that knowing that they're probably going to run the football for 50 times again against Arizona State, if I had to guess, they are suspect in the run game, and and we'll get into our breakdown of that down the road. But I just, when I'm breaking these games down from a reactionary standpoint, I'm always looking to know what's the takeaway for the next game, especially in the playoffs. But there's just not much, to me at least, that I can glean from this for Texas. It was
Well,
a good win,
for the
but
record,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
no, you're good.
I was just going to say, for the record, I think Arizona State's better against the run than Clemson is at this point, and it shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't be that way. But Wes Goodwin is useless. I'm sorry. You've got NFL talent on this front seven for Clemson, and that's why I say you got to get rid of this guy. He's doing less with more,
Yeah,
right? And that's not what you need out of any coach. Obviously, you want to do more with less. He's doing less with more, and it's a problem. Um, Arizona State, they can get down and dirty with you on that defensive line. Now, I mean, they're going to be able to clog it up in the middle. I'm worried about off the edges with Arizona State, and that linebacker play, and being able to get them linebackers up to the line of scrimmage, make a play off the edge, on some one-on-one tackling situations, and then I'm worried about Texas bombing them over the top. But with all that being said, kind of looking forward to that matchup, Mason, Arizona State's got a really good ground game. And we've seen Georgia, both times they've played Texas, run the ball pretty successfully, even though Georgia, for 7 of the 8 quarters they played Texas, they weren't a run football team. So what does a guy like Scadaboo do against this Texas defensive line? I think he's going to have a pretty good day. So we'll see. Can Arizona State play some keep away? Can they get some stops on defense? That'll be something interesting to talk about this week for sure. We're going to talk about it more on Tuesday. Guys, I wish the games were better for us this weekend, but it is what it is. It's first round of college football playoff. I think where there's going to be some tweaks made. Nothing speaks to these executives quite like hitting them in the pocketbook. And there was the viewership, I'm sure, was not great this weekend. And to get these guys' attention, the only way you're going to be able to do that is literally hit them in the pocketbook, and that's what happened this weekend. So that's less money they're going to make next year when it's time to sell the ads for all this stuff. So it's something that will be tweaked, and again, it's not going to be tweaked with the fan in mind. I'm just letting y'all know now that these guys don't care about us fans. They care about getting that advertisement money. So it's going to be revolving around that. We'll see what happens in the weeks and months to come for the college football playoff. I do expect to get some news on that at some point over the next couple of months here. But guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. We're overreacting, and that's it tonight. We're going to be back on Tuesday. Y'all come join us. It'll be around 7:30 p.m. Make sure that your notification bell is turned on. Make sure you're subscribed right now. That way you'll be notified whenever we go live. We certainly do appreciate you guys tuning in, commenting in the comment section. We're going to see all of you guys Tuesday evening here on the First and Long College Football Show. Everybody have a great start to your week. See you soon.